Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the space. Please bear with us a few moments here while we get all our panel in attendance.
How's it going, everybody? Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can. I think we have like 2 out of 6 speakers currently.
You want to ping him?
Yep, working on that right now.
What's going on, everybody? Glad to be on the space.
Howdy, Alan. Appreciate you joining.
You guys see, we got almost 1,000 listeners on the last one, and that was mostly just the quiet count. It's pretty good.
Space listeners are going up and to the right.
Hockey stick.
That's what we need. I think we got a few.
We got 2 more. It looks like.
Yeah, Cosmic
Speakers.
Work, I believe, is here.
Anyway, during the space, we'll give it another minute. But if people have questions that are of interest, feel free to drop them in a comment. We'll be looking at them, so might pick through them, answer them if they're good.
Yeah, the space is pretty loaded. Definitely a dense topic to get through. We talk about privacy and all the different things that crypto can do to help address it.
Well, if it isn't a dense topic, why would you talk about it?
Yeah, the news on the FBI having their token that they launched is pretty relevant to this.
Fucking shitcoin. That was pretty funny, man. I do have
Yeah.
to say.
Like, I would definitely love to hear that meeting on how that went down, where the one guy in the FBI was like, "Hey guys, we should launch our own token."
I got a great idea, boys. What was the name of it too? It was pretty funny.
It was like an AI thing, right? It was like AI NFT. It was like you could see it, and it was like Fed coin. You know, like the way it was worded, you can like definitely tell that the Feds made that.
Now you're saying it's FedCoin. You probably have friends in your DMs who are like, "Oh, you
Your
know what,
private.
guys? Uh, all you guys all have Feds for friends, and they're probably all reporting you to the FBI. And I'm definitely not a Fed.
Yeah,
I hate the Feds, right? That's probably what your DMs look like.
there's probably Fed in this space right now. They're among us.
Well, at the end of the day, we're just building utility for people, and it is perfectly legal.
It's a great way to start a privacy space. So we
Okay, I think we got enough preamble in here. Let's get this going, Matt.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Looks like we're still waiting on 2, so I'll keep my eyes peeled and see if they join and add them up as we go along. All right. Let's hey YJ, I see you requested. If we have time near the end, I'll let you come up, but for now we're gonna focus on our current panel. Appreciate it though. So welcome everybody. Appreciate the time, the attention, the space. and we're going to have a discussion about privacy and crypto. How much privacy is necessary? What are the differences between cash and crypto? And where are we at today and where do we go from here? We have some folks who are probably just getting introduced to the Quiet Network and our audience as well. So I thought to kind of like set the stage and help get some introductions out of the way, I'd ask just a simple question and then kind of pass the mic around, give everybody a chance to speak. Let's go with this. Hey, how does everybody think about privacy when they're using the traditional finance system, either cash or cards such as Visa? And how does that impact your spending, if at all? And let's hand it off to Alan and Dr. K, and then we'll just go around the room. Raise your hand when you're ready.
I was on a different screen. Yeah, so, looking at privacy, crypto originally meant to be facilitated as cash, and having these public infrastructure networks that are operated by anyone that can come in and contribute is a new novel thing that blockchain has facilitated and given to people really since cash. And cash is that first public payments infrastructure, and our money supply and the way that we've used money has really been distorted by these private institutions. So I'm excited about the ability for crypto to rein that back in, operate payments and finance on public infrastructure, and bringing some semblance of ownership and privacy back to individuals. I don't think crypto has necessarily filled that void yet, but there's a lot of trade-offs that we're working on to improve privacy in those areas.
Thanks, Alan. I'll just add, Alan's a CTO here at the team developing Quiet Network. If we could, let's do some real brief introductions as we answer these questions. Thanks, team.
Sure. Yep. CEO of Dominant Strategies, co-founder of the Quiet Protocol. Excited to chat more.
This is Dr. K, CTO at Dominant Strategies, building the tech behind Quiet Network. In terms of sort of my relationship with the traditional financial system and privacy, I actually find myself using cards almost ubiquitously at this point. Certainly not out of preference. It's kind of out of convenience, and a lot of stores have stopped sort of allowing for cash. Right. That being said, there are definitely situations where maybe crypto comes into play just because it has sort of transnational properties that you can't easily get with payment rails quickly. So certainly use it for that from time to time. I will say, from my perspective, just with regards to privacy in the financial system, at least it is currently quote unquote siloed, even if you're not using cash. So when you use your card issuer is really the only one privy to your transactions, or if you're using a bank card, your bank. Now, obviously, those things can be discovered under law enforcement action or subpoena. I'm not really necessarily concerned with that at the moment within the United States, because we're not yet persecuting people for their opinions or political views. But that certainly has happened elsewhere in recent times, including our northern neighbors, Canada. So I'm definitely concerned with it on a macro scale. And I would love it if there was a way to more easily use something like cash, potentially in a digital format, to really accommodate how we live and transact today.
Thanks, Dr. K. 100X podcast. I'm pretty sure you raised your hand first. Feel free.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me so much. It was really great to be here. When I saw that Quiet was on the X co-host, I was like, oh man, that's really awesome to see. For anyone who doesn't know the 100X podcast, My name is Caesar, one of the co-hosts for the podcast. Our goal with the program is really making crypto for everyday people, taking really complex conversations with protocols, projects, games, anything in between in the space, and really putting it in a way that is really easy to understand, especially for new people that are just starting out in the space. And it's really awesome to see Quiet Network here because I was actually looking when we had our podcast with you guys back in January of this year, I think with Alan yourself, man. So I pinned it up here for anyone who hasn't had the chance to see that episode. Really awesome stuff that you guys are building. And when it comes to privacy, I think it's really hard because I understand with crypto, we're here for a little bit layer of privacy as well. But anytime I use anything that's not cash in the real world, I have to understand that, like, hey, if somebody wanted to, this transaction could be tracked or could be traced in some way, which is a really weird thing to really think about when you really sit down and think like, dang, really don't have any privacy if I'm not using anything other than cash. Really interesting concept here, and I'm really excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Cosmic.
Hey guys, it's Asad from Cosmic CEO. CEO of Cosmic Network here. Thanks a lot for having me as well, first of all. But yeah, just to answer your question, so Cosmic Network, I mean, we're a decentralized VPN platform, so privacy is very much at the core of everything that we do in terms of our principles. And that question as well, when it comes to cash versus crypto, I mean, I know, like one of the other speakers said as well, using like card and things like that has become almost like the de facto way of paying for things. But I think that privacy element, it's massively important to have, because like what is going on around the world, you do not know what's going to be made illegal when, in all honesty. And that just doesn't cover obviously the immoral things. There could be something very simple where it's just been outlawed just because that's the choice of the government at that particular time. So yeah, we feel crypto is the potential answer to that in terms of that. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think there's a little bit more development that needs to happen. But we're heading in the right direction, I believe. So yeah, it's something that we can definitely all work on.
I'll second that. Cluster, I think you had your hand up for a minute, but you dropped it. Feel free.
Yeah, by the way, this is YJ. So yeah, I was trying to come from a personal account, but you didn't let me in. So I got here from the official account. So yeah, this is YJ, co-founder to Clash Protocol. What I believe in terms of privacy is, because like, consider it in a way that, okay, cash versus crypto. So the very first thing that you strike in your mind is those privacy coins, right? That Tornado Cash, or these coins which are there. So do you like some of the things which we can talk about? But then there are other side of things as well when we talk about these privacy coins, right? For someone who's a newbie, some crypto currency or some crypto coin which can like help you not trace the transactions, or you could say not trace who owns those coins, and but still it's on a public ledger, are those privacy coins. So like, I think like it would be an interesting discussion to take ahead around how much privacy is necessary, like with the cash versus crypto. So yeah, like would be interested to have the conversation ahead alongside with other panelists.
Yeah, hey, real quick, Matt, I just want to maybe put like a frame around this before we get into the discussion more.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, specifically, I just want everyone to be kind of aware of what happened in Canada. Right, Canada is supposed to be a free country. It's supposed to be a progressive democracy. But they had one of the most fascist like things happen not more than a year and a half ago. And it has to do with Canadian truckers. So what happened was the truckers in Canada were being forced by the central government to get a COVID vaccine. And many of these truckers were saying, we work alone, we work outdoors, we don't need to take a COVID vaccine. It's experimental, and we don't want to take it. We don't think it's safe. So they were told by the government, if you want to work, like, you're going to have to get the vaccine. So they ended up creating a protest in the Capitol. They went, they parked their trucks. They kind of like did what, people do in a democracy, is they petitioned their government to be heard. And this was sort of taking over the Capitol, making it hard to, commute, and it was creating a headache for Justin Trudeau. So what he did, instead of listening to the right of people to like have bodily autonomy, like one of the most fundamental rights, he decided to declare an emergency. And with this emergency, he made it so he could confiscate people's trucks. He made it so that he could confiscate money out of people's bank accounts. But most egregiously, anybody who donated money to the truckers, say $20, he used his emergency authority to freeze any other assets that were linked to the account that they sent the $20 from. So when we talk about privacy, and we talk about censorship, and we talk about overreach of government, and we talk about being able to actuate free speech to petition your government so that they represent your interests, this is like the perfect example of the most egregious form of overreach that could possibly happen. Peaceful demonstrations over having sovereign bodily autonomy and then being coercively shut down by choking off the financial system. Madness. So like when we talk about privacy, it's not this abstract concept. It is the like first derivative of free speech and being free individuals in a representative democracy.
Here, here. Yeah, I think the impacts are becoming realer and realer every day. Optio, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Whatever thoughts you have, and please introduce yourself. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, unfortunately. Now,
Well,
is anybody else here, Optio?
I do not hear him.
Okay. All right. I just got a thumbs down.
So anyway, I just want to frame this as like privacy is no longer a thing that we may need in the future. There have
Yeah.
been examples of it where we would have benefited from it a year ago, right? And with more technology and more sort of big brother activity from governments is becoming more and more important, because all governments ultimately should be deriving their power from their population. So how do you have free speech? How do you have the ability to petition them if you don't have some sort of economic freedom about what you do, what you support, and how you express your speech? You don't. So like privacy in the financial system is as important as free speech.
Yeah, realer today, I think, than it's been in all of our lifetimes, probably. Cosmic, you want to riff on that? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I didn't know it was that bad in Canada. I remember seeing the truckers protest there, but like freezing people's assets just for like a donation, that's like a massive, massive overreach. And I mean, we've had things like that in the UK. I haven't seen anything as bad as that, especially around the COVID times as well. Every single government seemed to just go into overdrive with what they were doing, trying to do. And what we saw a lot of here was people's, and across the world as well, to be fair, was people's speech. And just because they were speaking out against the government, and not even just speaking out, just questioning things really, as to like, okay, why is this happening? What is the need? Please, can someone give me some explanation? Is there, yeah, we saw a lot of there, but for them to be actually have the ability to go in there and just freeze people's assets, which I know for anybody out there, right? Everybody's got bills to pay, everybody's got to put food on the table and all that stuff. For them to be able to do that so easily just shows how how desperately we need something like this.
Yeah,
Great.
and I'll just give another example because like I think one of the problems is when we talk about privacy and we talk about these ideas, it just seems so ethereal to people that we need to frame it properly so that people care about it, right? So I'll give one other example. I think this is almost 7-8 years old, so this like predates COVID by quite a bit. But the CEO of Firefox or Mozilla, sorry, got fired in like 20 it was maybe it was like 2014 because 6 or 7 years earlier he had donated money to a PAC that was against or that supported a referendum in California which ultimately passed that was against gay marriage. Okay, and I'm making no comments here on like gay marriage, but the interesting part about this is that when he donated that money, the two prominent candidates for the Democratic presidency also did not support gay marriage. So this guy wasn't like an extremist. He was like dead center or left of center in his support of this referendum. And 6 or 7 years after the fact, they found out about it, decided that was like quote unquote a far right stance at that point, and then fired him for it. And because we don't have privacy, this is specifically to a disclosure in a political campaign donation, but an example of economics being used to coerce lack of having freedom of petition and speech. This is like a great example, but it's also this crazy example where this guy was in alignment with the center when this happened, and then like 7 years hence, they're like, "Oh no, you're far right," and they got him canned.
That's all great context. Cluster, I think you had your hand raised. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, a couple of things to add there. To which what Dr. K said that, and it's really shocking to see that. Okay, so on one hand, see there is politics in every democratic nation, right, or in every democratic city or state, and even if you are aligned with the ruling party which is in power, that's just sad to see. Like it's just because of the fact, and it's just because of the fact that uh you donated some money out of for something and you are being like tracked over that, right? But then also we would also need to make sure to look for, as the topic suggests, that how much privacy is needed. That's a very good question because people have tried solutions, right? But then how can we have this extent of money laundering or anti-money laundering AML practices implemented over that, right? So that's also a very question that needs to be answered around here. So like, would love to know thoughts from the panel, and then I can give my thoughts over it.
Yeah, that's actually where I was hoping we'd go next. I think today in the traditional financial system, that's why, we prefer cash. Technically, the transaction details are strictly between the two parties conducting it, but we're, as Dr. K and Alan mentioned, we're now in a world where it's mostly card. So I'll pose this to the panel, riffing off of what Cluster just mentioned, what do we have in crypto today? And what are the options here, and where have we come from, and where are we going? I recognize Ethereum is incredibly transparent, and a UTXO model chain like Bitcoin has some privacy, but is it enough? And perhaps how does Quiet Network think about this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of points to address here. I'll go back first to Dr. K's point on the truckers. One of the points that you didn't get to as they went through this demonstration and protest is that they actually tries to raise a GoFundMe for these truckers, and then that also got censored and limited. So they did a donation campaign to help
No,
fund
no, no,
these.
no, no. An aside here, Alan. It didn't get censored. it got stolen by the
Stolen.
government and donated to somebody else.
Yeah, it got donated to a different fund, right? So they raised like $1 million. They didn't give the $1 million to the truckers, and then they gave it to like some random thing. So like,
No, it was like the thing that was opposite of the truckers.
right.
I don't remember who they gave it to, but they literally stole the money and like gave it to the other side.
Yeah, no, it was completely insane. And then on the KYC piece, so like looking at like AML and actors and system with privacy, it's obviously a very delicate subject, and that is kind of why you get a lot of these concerns, not just around value and payments, but also more so emerging with information. And so you have large entities that want to control nation states, governments that not only want purview into how you spend your money, but how you talk and transact. And obviously, we want to stop crime and we want to do other good things for humanity, but at the same time, it directly conflicts the First Amendment in the case of people that are in the United States, and it conflicts the ability to use freedom of speech. And in many ways, transacting with money is a form of speech. And you have people like Pavel Durov getting arrested in France for Telegram, and you have other, especially in Britain now, if you criticize the government, you'll be able to go to jail or get arrested. So there's a real concern, and it really murks the water some. And just what does that line? When does that line get crossed between, okay, I'm sending my money, and I don't want that to be as monitored or as tracked, versus I'm saying something that someone might disagree with or the government might disagree with, and they're going to scrutinize or arrest me for that. So I think that's all in the realm of what's feasible. And Optio, I see you have your hand up. Matt, let's maybe hold on until some of the quiet pieces later. Let's keep this more high level and see where the conversation goes.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can.
Oh my gosh. I have literally been sitting here trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with my mic. I want to talk so bad. So I'm Brian Ferry. I am one of the co-creators of the Optio blockchain. And man, this conversation couldn't be more perfect for us. Me and my partners acquired a social media platform you might have heard of called Parler, that was shut down for all of these very reasons that we're talking about. Parler emerged in 2018 as the free speech platform, that we will not deplatform platform. And Amazon, big tech, decided to shut it down. So it took us a couple of years. We revamped it, and now we've launched it on a blockchain and built utility within the application. So not only when you guys are talking about the freedom of the use of money, you're absolutely right that the way that we use money and access the financial system is a freedom of expression problem. And as we look at what's going on around the world right now with everybody, all these governments trying to silence the people, this is horrifying stuff.
Yeah. Okay. This is another interesting waypoint in our discussion related around privacy and economics and freedom of speech. Parler was a crazy thing. You guys said you acquired it, but like the crazy part is when they shut that down, it was big tech basically just turning their servers off. And then I want to say they also got debanked. So they got like all their bank accounts taken from them, so they couldn't actually pay for services anymore, and then they couldn't find anyone to like host their platform.
That's exactly right. And you know what's crazy is the media, not the government, but the media said that it was shut down because it was used in the insurrection on the Capitol. And what's interesting is post being turned off by Amazon, and I have my own opinion as to why Amazon wanted it shut down, but we investigated the entire system. There wasn't one communication that was related to that day. So when you think about the power that big tech and the banks have, that is crazy. I mean, there were 20 million users on Parler when they shut it down, and a lot of users overseas that didn't even give a crap about American politics. So you think about what, and as we frame this around crypto, I like to frame it around blockchain more than just crypto, because I believe that the process that we're going through right now is we're going to change the paradigm. Big tech has turned our personal data, behavioral data, the things we think about, the things we care about, the things we love and hate. They've turned all of that into a $2.5 trillion industry. And we, the people, should own that data. And with the blockchain, we're able to do that. We're able to allow the users to keep and monetize their data if they choose. And quite frankly, I think all of us in the so-called crypto space, I don't like necessarily that term because that'd be like saying we're in the dollar industry. But if you think about it, blockchain and its ability to have immutable records and the ability to lock those immutable records, we can now give the power truly back to the people. The vision of the early internet was to democratize information, but obviously that didn't happen.
Okay, Opti,
I think Cluster has their hand up though.
Hold on. He can't tease us like that. I want to hear why he thinks AWS shut them down.
Well, I obviously this is just an opinion, but AWS, I don't even know if I should say it out loud. AWS, I believe, was trying to win more of Twitter's business, and they saw Parler at the time as a competitor to that because it grew incredibly fast. So that's my gut feeling, but I don't know. But the fact that big tech and the big banks have that much control in our life, that to me is even scarier than what was going on in the 40s in Germany.
Cluster, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I want to go ahead, but there are three different opinions and three different thought processes that are there in my mind. First things first, so when we are talking about the US politics, so wanted to know from all of you guys, like if in case we have a government, right, that there is a debate between Donald Trump and other opposition and Donald Trump is considered to be more friendly towards the blockchain and the crypto thing. And if in case like there are rumors around, if in case he comes into action, then there would be like the as a measure of the economy around revolves around US. There would be some action in the crypto space happening around. Also to the point where Opshio mentioned about how important it is for like privacy of data and stuff, right? So there, I would love to do a quick shill about Cluster. I hope it's all right. So yeah, so for there, like we are building a platform, right, where and it's a genuine problem, right? It's a genuine problem for AI developers to monetize their creations and as well as if you see about the data that is being captured by all these big techs, as Offshore talked about, that most of our decisions, most of our activities are tracked by these big techs, and most of our decisions are influenced by them. A real life use case and example to this would be the Google ad system, right? So if in case you search something around, you will be targeted with ads over all of your platforms, be it your laptop, be it your computer, be it your smartphone, everywhere you just see those ads, and it's a pushy sale kind of a thing which you will be having around. So yeah, based on that, monetization of that data is important for the users, right? The right monetization should be done. And that's where, and it's not just about Cluster, but all these platforms which are built towards monetizing the user's data by providing privacy layer on that data is something that is important to look forward for. On top of that, for AI developers, right? Because when we are moving towards the era where AI is the crucial thing, right? It's the only thing that we are seeing as the future. If in case someone is seeing, so I am a core supporter of this fact that yes, if you have seen my profile as well, I've written E/ACC. So that just simply means that AI should be developed at any cost. That is what it means. That is something kind of an opinion or kind of a belief for certain folks, right? That AI development should happen at any cost, right? So if we believe and if there is a community or a part of community that believes in that thing, then yeah, then we should make sure that these things should be considered in terms of having the data privacy. And that is also another fact to the thing where Durov was arrested, right? And there were rumors like how secure is Telegram, how private is Telegram, as well as there were also rumors about Telegram getting banned, as well as Telegram might share these chats with the governments for inquiries which are political, or which are around criminal cases or stuff like that. So like would love to know opinion from all the panel around over all these stuff.
So maybe to kind of focus in the conversation a little bit here, specifically with regards to privacy in sort of crypto blockchains and money and cash. Maybe I can just give like a little bit of background to sort of frame the conversation. So presently, sort of in these systems, if you look at something like Bitcoin, Bitcoin effectively has zero privacy, even when you use tools like Samurai, which has been shut down. It's still hard to get good sort of anonymity using something like Bitcoin because of things like address reuse, but also just because SATs create sort of identifiable denominations. If we look at something like an account-based system like Ethereum, Ethereum is perfectly trackable. I would say Bitcoin is generally perfectly trackable. And then you have systems that are not like that. So I think sort of the best sort of landmark of privacy is Monero, because it uses a process of ring signatures and mix-ins to sort of make it so I can't see amounts, and I have sort of an uncertainty about who's sending what to whom in every transaction. The other thing that it has that I think is like sort of a key piece that very few other systems have is that it's a requirement, meaning every Monero transaction is a ring signature. It's not some optionality, it's not some subset. And that actually is probably why Monero is the most private thing out there. Sort of in the middle, you have things like Zcash or Tornado Cash, and they're using zero knowledge proofs, which cryptographically that's fine, but they're only doing it on a subset of transactions. So when you're sort of in that subsetted pool, you may have a modicum of privacy, but entering and exiting that pool back into sort of like a known set always reveals data, and it's relatively easy to track on either side. So there's sort of temporal analysis that can be done to sort of figure out, as you transit this sort of like subset, which kind of acts like a mixer that will ultimately still reveal your data. So when we're talking about what exists in the world, we have Bitcoin, which basically I would say has the worst privacy on the planet in some ways. Then you have sort of these middle systems that create good privacies for subsets, but you lose the privacy when you enter and exit. And then you probably have like Monero in the crypto space. That's sort of like the continuum of privacy. Does anyone have any like asides or things to add to that?
Yeah, I can add just a quick thing. So, I also believe these ENS systems, right? These ENS domains and all these domains which are built, is something which is anti-privacy or something. Because let's say, okay, I am a cool guy and I just bought, okay, cluster.eth on one of the, on one of the wallet, right? Let's say it is an ERC wallet, and I bought that up. So now it is being doxed, right? You might be understanding with some research, with some OSINT, you can understand that this wallet belongs to Cluster. Now, to all the transactions that will be going from here and to some other wallets, it's like it is easily trackable to say that, okay, there is a footprint of Cluster into it. You cannot say what exactly that those transactions are done for. It might be a possibility, it might be some expense, or there might be multiple things which you can talk about. But I think these ENS domains and all these domains where you have, like, you can even take Elias as well, but I think it's kind of towards anti-privacy. Like, would love to know opinion from the panel around here over
Yeah,
this.
I'll jump in there
well,
and say, on the ENS, you're absolutely right. That was one of the things early on in the Ethereum ecosystem that people were pretty in love with, and people still to this day use ENS in their Twitter handle. They'll have it across many different blockchains, and there's real risk associated with that. You have people that are able to look directly at your ENS that you're publicly using and go see your wallet. And that's something that not a lot of people are directly aware of whenever they want to publicize or get paid at an ENS. And not only having it just on Ethereum, but if you link your layer 2 wallets or you link other different ecosystems there, then you're really showing all of your transaction activity across all of these different blockchains. So I think you're absolutely right, just in terms of the privacy concerns around having labeling on a DNS system like that. It looks like 100x has
Because
their
the Yeah, because the very first thing that you had was that the blockchain had was with a wallet is your digital identity is just an alphanumeric number. It is not associated with a name or with something that has, okay, XYZ.ETH or XYZ.BNB or something like that, right? Secondly, what I think is these NFTs, where there are these social platforms that issues NFT, and that has the metadata of my name, maybe, or maybe something which can resonate, right? So this is also something that I think is anti-privacy when we talk about the true layer of reaching privacy in terms of using a wallet.
100x, you got something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to the conversation. Thinking back at the main question for the space, right? How much privacy is necessary? I've just been sitting here really hearing everybody's.
Can you guys hear 100x?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't rugging. Yeah, I've just been sitting here listening to everyone's takes and seeing the different points that Dr. K also brought up. And I think when I try to answer the question of how much privacy is necessary, I always really like to think about the new user that's coming into crypto and what their sort of experience is going to be like using these different systems that we have in place, whether that's Bitcoin, whether that's Ethereum, whether that's Quai, whether that's another layer one or a whole nother blockchain in general. And I think it's really going to depend on to what they need to be doing for that specific transaction. We talked about the ENS, and I think there is some validity to the idea of like you do lose a lot of the privacy when you do something like this, but also for someone that's just going to be trading normal things and wants that specific following to know what they're trading or they're doing a specific niche. I think it really comes down to what are you doing on the blockchain and does it require privacy? I've come to be aware that I forego a lot of privacy on my day-to-day life in exchange for convenience. I use Apple Pay pretty much everywhere I go. I rarely, if not ever, try not to carry my wallet and just rather pay everything through my phone out of convenience. I know that's definitely not the way to go if you're looking for somewhere private. But if I'm trying to send money maybe to someone in another country or someone where it's really hard to go through the regular financial routes, then I look more towards crypto because now I don't have to worry about maybe remittance in another country or any sort of crazy fees. Now I can just send money directly to people in a more anonymous way without having to really worry about all those restrictions. I think the privacy needed for each individual person really comes down to the utility that they're trying to do. And I think people will find those specific use cases in crypto based on what they're looking for. Where I think a lot of these different utilities, the more private you get, the more niche it gets, because when you usually go for a more private route, it really does take away a lot of that convenience from the user itself. So I think it's going to be a really, really nice balance, but I think all these solutions that we've been talking about in this space will really find the right users, especially if they're looking for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the convenience is a huge factor. And I don't know if that's necessarily a privacy constraint, but more so just crypto hasn't gotten to that point yet. And we haven't gotten the adoption and the acceptance, whether it's a point of sale terminal or being able to send money to someone easily on an app. And the ideal thing was privacy by default in many cases. And instead, we have to struggle to find that privacy. So you have to jump through those hoops, get onboarded onto these systems, and remove a lot of the easy use that you get from like an Apple Pay. But going back to even some of the news that we were talking about just today, I think this is more so breaking news. 11 minutes ago, that Fidelity had a breach that impacted 77,000 customers across social security numbers, licenses, personal information. And when we talk about privacy and we have these large systems that are really custodians of not only our money, but our data and our information that is used in our, well held close information and information, that's a risky thing. So privacy really obfuscates that as well, not only from the access and ease of use, but from the data that's needed. And we discussed too about the people that are getting unbanked, and the people that are getting their assets removed and them relating it back to the truckers and in Britain and more. So I think you're absolutely right, but it's up to us as the people building in crypto to make it easier to get that privacy by default.
Okay. I gotta interject here, just so
Yeah,
we like
then
all
let's hand
understand
it to
something.
Cosmic and then Optio.
Yeah. When we're talking about using Ethereum with or without ENS addresses, you should have zero expectations of privacy. Everything that you have ever done in an EVM environment, you should expect that to be known that you did it at some point in the future by literally everybody. Chain analytic companies, if you are on an EVM system, know everything about everybody, and they can likely tell you exactly what meme coin you traded last month, regardless of like how far away you think you are from an exchange and sort of how private you think your wallet is or what your address use is like. They know exactly who you are.
Good point. It's pretty transparent. Go ahead, Cosmic.
Yeah, to be honest, my point was adding to that as well. It's kind of like, especially on Ethereum and if you're trading there as such, really, it's not private. Everything is there on the blockchain. But what is the crossover between privacy and anonymity, as well? Really, that's kind of like I think a big question is kind of like, are the two the same thing? Are they are they, do they fit the same mold, or are they two separate things altogether? And is what we're really looking for, is it that anonymity in terms of what we're being able to do?
Go ahead, Optio.
Well, let me just respond to that though. I would argue that given the number of KYC AML points that exist and what effectively are known accounts, there is no difference between privacy and anonymity in this case. So I don't even think you have anonymity. You might have it generally if like somebody without a tool is looking at the blockchain. But if somebody with a tool or like somebody with a little more power wants to figure out, you have neither privacy nor anonymity.
Yeah, true. Yeah, very true. Yeah.
So Dr. K here is just talking about Zach XBT vehicles.
Yeah, let's go to Optio. He's had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, so I actually want to ask a rhetorical question. Are we advocating in this discussion? Are we advocating that anonymity and privacy of where you spend your funds is a problem that we all need to solve? And maybe it's not rhetorical. Maybe I'd like to hear what you guys think about that.
No, that's a great question. Sorry, stand by.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the question is, where do you draw the line, right? Because obviously no one will support people being able to fund a terrorist organization or anything like that using crypto as such, really. But also at the same time, like what happened in Canada, just because the government at that time deemed that not to be acceptable, they decided to overstep that line. So
Absolutely.
who's responsible for putting that line in the sand and saying what is allowed and what isn't allowed? And that's always going to be the challenge with crypto, in all honesty.
Right. And that's why, the topic's titled cash versus crypto, right? I think especially from a regulatory perspective, there seems to be a level of acceptance in the privacy allowed with cash. Crypto probably has a long way to get there. So I would say, actually, yeah, there is a line. I think the question for crypto is, where is it and how do we get there?
Yeah, I would say that if you look at these concepts of AM KYC AML, like these are actually relatively new concepts, especially used with the amounts that they're used by and the frequency which they're used by. If we go back 30 years, we didn't have any of these things, and people were able to investigate and stop criminal activity without having to have a surveillance apparatus into every transaction in the financial system. Seems like law enforcement has just gotten lazy and then just decided to shred the concepts of like the Fourth and Fifth Amendment so we could, make their jobs easier. But from my perspective, when it comes to crypto, the balance is we should have the ability to have cash like transactions, but we need that not just from a point of individual privacy and points of free speech. I would argue that you need it just to be able to do basic commerce as a competitive company in a capitalistic setting. So, if, for example, we actually had a scalable system of crypto and it was on an account basis, and Chipotle exists and Freebirds exists across the street with something like an Ethereum accounting system, Chipotle could see everything that Freebirds is doing. They would know how many burritos they're selling, at what price, at what time of day, to what customers. They would know what they're paying their suppliers, so on and so forth. So my argument would be just to have crypto used as a transactional mechanism, it needs to have cash-like properties if competitive companies are ever going to use it.
And to expand on that, I think when you look at Visa and transacting in regional banks, I actually think that privacy in many cases is better than something like Bitcoin, because you have different legislation in place like the GLBA or GDPR, and there's laws and access and steps and hoops that are required for the government to go and take purview into that ledger that a regional bank has. And so, of course, there's bank secrecy laws and things that affect your individual transactions that you do on a MasterCard or with your debit card, more specifically in that instance with a regional or local bank. But with something like Bitcoin, you pretty much blow that wide open. And you have people like ZachXBT that can go track down people with meme coin wallets and say, hey, this guy owns 5 million of this coin. And then actually becomes a health concern for these people in owning crypto. So I would say that the need for extended privacy is useful from not only I want the ability to spend this, but also how much you own and how that influences how you go about your day. And we haven't even gotten to the topic, and it's definitely a can of worms, but there's definitely a real looming threat of CBDCs that impact crypto and impact the way that people transact on blockchain and how stablecoins are used and how the privacy is influenced there. So I know I kind of opened up a few different areas, but would love to hear if people have thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. One is, and I have said this since the very beginning of my journey in Bitcoin or in blockchain and crypto, all of us that were the early pioneers and were developing all of this stuff for various reasons, we created tools that are completely unfamiliar to the everyday person. You know, when Steve Jobs created the Macintosh computer, he put folders on the desktop because that's what people had on their desk, right? And I think in crypto we made this really weird leap where, you know, send me your wallet address and I'll send it to you, and we'll wait for it, this, that, and the other thing, and it just became, it's very difficult to use. Now, the reason I put that into the framework of privacy, while I don't advocate the ability, I'm sure most of you don't either, I don't want people using crypto to fund human trafficking, for example, and horrific things where we can't find them. I also don't advocate that the government get involved and be able to, you know, seize your funds or whatever. But I think until we as a community and as a broader community within the blockchain, until we normalize the use of it, where we could do POS transactions at the counter, then we're going to continue to have these long and arduous discussions about how do we protect ourselves. So I may be an advocate for the freedom and anonymity part in a slightly different way than this discussion, because I'm not one of those that thinks that we should be, you know, completely unregulated. I think that regulation is good when it's done appropriately.
But then would love to know, like, how an advocate can educate the basic, the basics, right? Because MetaMask is there for years. There are multiple wallet inventions which are done. There is gasless wallets. There's chain abstraction, account abstraction. There are multiple things which people are working upon. But still, crypto hasn't reached that threshold of what you say of people widely accepting it. From this point, I also got to remember this series which HBO released recently, right? it was shown in the series that when El Salvador accepted Bitcoin as a legal tender, right? There it was the president of El Salvador was in influence it was in influence with some other folk who had invested in trust in cryptocurrencies back in when this thing happened, right, a couple of years back. So yeah, so what's the best way? I would love to ask from the panel to make people educate about it.
So I'm just gonna kind of circle in here. So one of the things that Kwai is trying to do um, is really answer sort of that UI UX problem that was mentioned, and also just the general acceptance problem, which is build a system that can be used transactionally. And with our concept of Chi, or this energy dollar, we're building in a system where every user will have cash-like properties when they use Chi. So they don't have to really know about privacy. They don't have to worry about privacy. They just load up their non-custodial wallet. They can scan a QR code, pay for goods and services, and they will get cash-like privacy guarantees. So that is one thing that we built into our system because we think it is necessary if you are working at scale to have cash-like properties, and the only way you can guarantee that is by baking those sort of into the core protocol. So that's kind of what we did, and we believe that with that we can offer sort of that transparent system where it's easy for the users to use it, easy for them to have privacy, and with that be able to gain a higher degree of adoption.
100X, you've been itching to speak, it sounds like. Go ahead.
Oh, no, my bad. I just didn't want to cut anyone off. I think I just wanted to add something here, and this is sort of where the building on top of the point that I made last, and wanting to touch on what Alan said in terms of being, the builder's responsibility to make these tools and privacy more like table stakes instead of something that people have to look for. It's more like it just comes baked into the products that they already use. And I think, unfortunately, society, for the most part, I don't want to speak for everyone, I think most people were rather opt in for something that's convenient and the product itself, even if it doesn't have the privacy component. I think of a lot of the people that we talk to on the shows and everything, and a lot of the things that they're building, it's more for the user minded person. And I think just regular users aren't really thinking about their privacy too much, unfortunately. I think it's not until something bad happens where they get hacked or they get followed or somehow their data gets leaked and they're getting all these random calls, scam calls and everything, that people become aware of how loose they've been with their privacy. And I think what Kwai is building, like Dr. K just mentioned, of having that privacy automatically baked into the product where we are able to have that cash-like property in crypto, I think is huge. But I also do think that I do challenge the notion of whether that's something that needs to be uniform across all of crypto, because I also do see the value of the ease of use that other blockchains have created, where they do forego some of that privacy, because I do understand that building privacy centric first and then everything after does take a little bit longer time. But if Kwai is able to build something that's able to have privacy at the base layer and then build all that utility and convenience afterwards, where it doesn't matter, like the difference between using Ethereum and Kwai is negligible. Both have the same sort of products, same sort of services that people can use, because people are service centric. I'm going to go where I'm already using the games that I'm playing, the protocols that I'm using, the things that I'm using. That's where I'm going to go, whether it's on this network or that network. But if you tell me that all the same things that I'm already using are building with something that has privacy under it, that's a very unique selling point that I think that the space could definitely need.
Just to add some clarity from Kwai's perspective, so we actually have two tokens in our system, right? We have Kwai, and Kwai is EVM compatible, and it offers sort of the same privacy guarantees as the EVM, which are basically none. We then have Chi, which we call this energy dollar, which is meant to be an endogenous unit of account tied to the price of energy, and it has the properties of a medium of exchange, sort of through how we make it have cash-like properties using fixed denomination UTXO sets. So we're kind of building what I would call a crypto monetary system, and that we're establishing something that has a store of value, but can also sort of easily deal with these traditional use cases of porting things over that are built on the EVM, swaps, ERC20s, DEXs, games, what have you. But then we also have that endogenous cash unit, Chi, so that you can actually use crypto transactionally. So it's actually a very challenging game to sort of create that expected utility and have privacy simultaneously. And the way we're accomplishing it is by having a split ledger.
I have a quick question follow for Dr. K. Do you guys have use cases already in place to show that the cash like crypto tokens already being used?
Yeah, so we're actually launching our first test net that has Chi Live in it on Tuesday next week. So we'll see what use cases are discovered. I will say within our system, there is a native sort of speculative use case on hash rate that exists based off the relative emissions profiles of Chi and Quai. So Quai is really meant to be a deflationary token whose emission sort of goes down over time and sort of approaches zero inflation, whereas Chi is really meant to have a fixed price but a variable supply. So the net effect is Chi can be used even if you're not using it as cash, but can be used as a mechanism to speculate on changes in the hash rate, as well as the endogenous exchange rate in the protocol between Quai and Chi over time. So even if people aren't using it to go buy their lattes, miners and speculators may use it just as a mechanism for speculating on hash rate.
Great question. Cosmic, I saw your hand raised. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think it was just once going back to the point about convenience as well. That's something that we've seen ourselves as well when we've been doing a lot of our testing around our VPN app and everything. Is what are people doing? Do they want to go kind of like the full privacy route and no one can see them, but it's they lose some element of that convenience, or are they looking for like the balance between the two? And that's what I mean. What we did personally, we set up different modes and settings really where you could kind of go for that full privacy route and be very, very anonymous, or you could just have a VPN that gives you a bit like a basic level of protection but still keeps some element of privacy. Because in the crypto world, yes, I think people tend to be more privacy focused and go for that part as well. But when you look at the rest of the population and the rest of the world, I think most people would choose convenience over privacy. And I don't know if that's a wider challenge that we have to address.
Yeah, I guess my point from our perspective and how we're designing our product, our perspective is that we're making no compromises. Meaning, if somebody's using Quai or somebody's using Chi, it's going to look just like they're going to look analogous to each other. So there's no sort of compromise from the user experience to get that cash-like property. It's really just, do you preference sort of this deflationary asset that has smart contracts and no privacy, or do you preference this unit of account that probably has pretty stable purchasing power parity and cash-like properties? So, but from the perspective of like using it A to B, it should look exactly the same for our users.
That's a great point. I think you guys are hitting the nail on the head on the usability. In my experience, the privacy has to be baked in, but really kind of not a part of the pitch, especially if there's a hurdle in the user experience.
Hey, Cosmic, quick question about your guys' VPN service. Do you guys take crypto, Monero, anything for people to pay for their subscriptions?
So at the moment, it's a free app which you can download on iOS and App Store. But we are having our premium version coming out soon, where people will be able to pay via crypto as well.
And I'll have another question. So, what's kind of the differentiating feature between what you guys like are offering and say like a Molvad?
What our network is built on is purely decentralized. So the way it operates is that people have nodes and they've set up nodes all over the world as such, really. So you're not kind of going through, because the problem that you have with a lot of VPNs for like the regular, so like say you're in a place like in the Dubai, for example, where they routinely block IP addresses of VPNs and such, really, because the IP addresses and everything, it isn't a like a centralized database server somewhere and all that stuff. It's very difficult for them to block that. And we've built the network. The underlying network is all based on the blockchain as well. So yeah, trying to very much go down the full decentralized route there.
So can I make one other, I guess, interpolation? When you were talking about earlier about the different degrees of privacy, are you talking about effectively the number of hops that you're making through the routers?
Yeah. Yes,
So
that's right. Yeah.
effectively, you guys have a decentralized sort of Tor-like system with payments.
Effectively, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd invite anybody here to download our app on the App Store or the Play Store as well, actually.
I'm kind of geeking out now too. I got one question for you, actually, Cosmic, and then let's let Cluster speak. So your protocol for the actual tunneling, can you speak more about that? In my experience, the decentralized VPNs of recent passes are all kind of like web RTC based. Are you familiar with that?
A little bit, yeah. I'm not technical, so I can try.
Okay, yeah, no sweat.
But the tunneling, what I can do, happy to forward over like our white paper and everything, where it's got that in a lot more detail. And I'll be butchering it if I try to
No
go
sweat.
through it with you.
No sweat. I'm googling right now. Go ahead, Cluster.
No, so yeah, like with decentralized VPNs, the very first thought that I have in mind, there are two thoughts that I have in mind. First is a 3-year package of NordVPN that is sold to me at a cheaper rate, and the second is all these centralized VPNs selling your data. So would love to know, Cosmic, like how are you tackling that off, or if in case you're tackling that off, if yes, then how?
Yeah, so the data one is a big issue, and something that we've recognized, especially a lot of the premise that the people have as well with free VPNs, and it's true as well. We've seen those leaks ourselves. Is people selling your data? They're collecting your data when you're using it. So that's why we've got a very strict no logs policy in place, very similar to Mullvad as well. And Mullvad's a great example of it as well. It just they're not decentralized really. It's just that they're one sticking point. But they have another no logs policy. So they actually had. The Swedish authorities tried to raid them to get information, but they simply went there and they said, look, we don't have any logs, we don't keep any logs, and we have that same policy as well, where we don't take any logs from anyone.
Nice. Yeah, we'll definitely have to check that out. Thanks, Cosmic.
No worries at all.
Kind of getting back on topic. Alan alluded to it earlier. You know, when it comes to privacy, usability is key, and it also seems like that, you know, the governments are kind of embracing the concept of CBDCs. I'm curious what the panel's thoughts are on the privacy that may or may not actually be enabled with these CBDCs. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, we would just have no privacy. That's like the point of CBDCs. You know, I drive down the road and scan a QR code. I mean, Dr. K can probably speak on this more, but it would look like a system to what they have in China with credit scores and the ability to ensure that you use a certain amount of your money or you didn't use a certain amount of your money. I believe they've rolled out a pilot program in Thailand on CBDCs in which they wanted everyone in the economy to essentially spend all of that money within a 3-month time frame. If you didn't, your money went away. So there's a very clear way, not only from a privacy standpoint, but just a sovereignty standpoint, that these CBDCs would inflict on us. And there's a very real danger. I mean, the Fed already has pilot programs with CBDCs. They're using different influence of control against stablecoins that are issued on these networks already to insert themselves in ways that are acting as pseudo CBDCs. So when you talk about privacy, it's not just the realm of what can you view on the public ledger, but it would go pretty ingrained into our systems and our entrenched thinking of how we actually use money outside of just who sees how we use our money.
Yeah, I mean, what they're really trying to do with CBDCs is they're trying to
very, very interesting
hybridize
thread of thought there to expand on.
They're really trying to hybridize the concept of like public policy, social credit scores, and money, right? Like they want to be able to directly control your your actions, your spending, your saving, your purchasing of certain types of goods through CBDCs. A person that does great content on what they're actually doing with CBDCs and sort of digging deeply into the reports is Coin Bureau. I've listened to a number of his reports, and basically every CBDC that I have seen that they've talked about basically wants full privacy by full transparency by the central bank. So they kind of want like sort of peaking keys, so to speak, so reveal keys that sort of the central bank holds, i.e., the government holds, but the the private banks and commercial people wouldn't be able to see it. So it would be quote unquote transparent to the government, but then private in terms of like who else could see what transactions. So in some ways it's it's more private than Bitcoin, but you have one sort of master key, and as we just saw with sort of the Chinese hacking the back door that the NSA put into the trunk lines of Verizon, if you have a master key, that master key will be exploited and used by other people. So I wouldn't really depend on that concept of privacy. I will say there is an interesting feature to some CBDCs that has been proposed and actually piloted in China at scale, which is a kind of a concept of digital cash, which is interesting. Basically, if you have a SIM card with a provably unclonable function, you can use it to atomically swap private keys off chain. And the reason that they're using this in China is because to scale sort of blockchains with the traditional architectures they have now, to be able to handle all transactions, you need this sort of offline intermediation of settlement, which they can achieve by swapping private keys on SIM cards, which everybody has on their phone. So effectively, you can sort of trade units of cash, which are represented by these private keys, and then they periodically like sort of get reconciled back to the chain. So in some ways, of all the CBDCs that I've seen, that sort of digital cash portion of China's CBDC, which they're really introducing as a scaling mechanism, is probably one of the more private features.
So are you saying it's basically like offline crypto cash?
Yeah, no, that's like what it is. They're not doing it because they like the concept of privacy directly necessarily. It's really just a scaling tool.
Interesting. That's kind of where I was thinking we'd go next is really like, how do we start enabling even more cash-like properties? Like we have some of the privacy built in online when you're connected to the internet. How do we get to that last mile where, we can enable people who are in extremely rural areas or, trying to conduct transactions during natural disasters, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually like wrote a protocol for this previously. Yeah, it's just that you swap private keys on SIM cards. The protocol is called Phonon. If anyone wants to go and look at it, but it's somewhat akin to what the Chinese are doing. Basically, if you have a smart card or a SIM card, you have private keys. You can take any asset from any sort of digital ledger. You can generate a key on the card. You can send money to that. The card basically guarantees that there's only ever one copy of that key in the world, and if you sort of pull it off, it destroys it. So you can move on chain to off chain, off chain to on chain. But that's basically how you achieve true offline cash like properties. The issue with it, though, is that you need to trust the manufacturer of the silicon on the smart cards that you're using, and you need to trust the provisioner of the software that's going onto those cards. So there's sort of like a root key of trust that exists, and if the system sort of there's ways you can kind of detect leaks, and the leaks are like only so severe because it can only really like affect one card at a time. But you really have to trust the central authority in terms of not creating assets.
Got it. Would that look similar to, say, SSL trust trees?
I mean, it could, or you could just have one like central issuing authority. But remember what the trust like model is. You have to actually trust the silicon, and then you also have to trust the provision, right? And so then you could create like a tree of certificates, kind of like you're talking about after that. But I don't know why you would.
Right. I'm also kind of remembering some of the issues with Secure Boot that came out recently when those same keys used everywhere kind of got leaked. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, you're reaching back in time now.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But that's super interesting. So there's potential for cache-like properties online, and we also have a potential for cache-like properties offline. And this would enable a level of privacy that is, in our world today, currently accepted by the government. Is there any? Do you see any risks or any? I would say potential pushback or challenges with current regulatory structures and getting this implemented at scale?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I guess what I see is as long as we can create the digital analog while the physical cache still exists, I think it would be hard for regulators to sort of allow one and not the other. But if we were to say like take 10 more years and we're strictly digital and cache has become an anachronism, and I think at that point it would be much easier for them to then try to regulate it out of existence, so to speak.
Got it. So try to achieve as much distribution as possible out the gate.
Well, I mean, it's just like reestablishing what the mean of sort of acceptability is, right? And so if you build a system that's at the mean, you're fine. If like the mean shifts and then like you build something that's far away from the mean, then right, it'll get a lot more scrutiny.
Right. It's kind of. I'll just pause for a second. I had to rejoin because the app crashed. Sorry, team. So if anybody had their hand raised, please speak up. Doesn't sound like it. So just kind of riffing on that, Dr. K, just like the mean in terms of what's acceptable in privacy in our current system. I think the only thing that's still relatively private today is cache. It feels like that mean is shifting, right? Especially here in America, the availability of being able to transact with cash is lower than it's ever been. And then we also have what feels like a race to implement a CBDC. The BRICS is supposedly launching something that's like white labeled XRP as more of like an international unit of trade. Do you feel like we're racing against the CBDC at this point? And I kind of like to think crypto writ large has mostly given up on this, except for projects like Monero. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are racing against the CBDC. I think we're racing against a lot of things, right? There was an interesting quote from Peter Thiel that somebody from one of the previous spaces kind of put forth, but it was it was basically saying that maybe I can actually find it here real quick. But it was basically saying that politics and technology are in a war with each other. And if sort of politics wins, the individual loses out. But if technology sort of wins, we can reinforce the sovereignty of the individual. And I really do believe that we're at sort of a fork in the road here where we either sort of achieve the technologies required or the technologies that we have already developed will sort of subsume us. So yeah, I think we're in a fight for our lives.
I know I tend to agree. That being said, when I look at everything else happening in crypto, besides Monero, What other options are out there?
Well, let me just speak to Monero real quick. So, I know some of the Monero developers, very smart individuals. I do have to say they have consistently held true to their ideals and innovated sort of over time. But I will say that Monero isn't a solution because Monero can't scale, and the reason Monero can't scale is because of the cryptography that they use to verify amounts, as well as the verification times and the bandwidth required to do the appropriate number of participants in a ring sig, so like the ring size. So that being said, like Monero by its design is going to be kind of limited to a very low transaction throughput, which then actually makes it sort of like the bastion for criminals because not everybody can use it and it's like just there for privacy. So, there's some sort of hardcore advocacy where it's like, okay, I'm going to use Monero because I'm a hardcore privacy person. But, a lot of it is because people maybe are doing nefarious things with it. And that kind of is what it is. But I guess my point is, and this kind of goes back to my sort of definition of sort of the spectrum of privacy. I personally believe that what you need to have privacy is you need a bigger set size. So instead of doing 5 TPS, let's do 50,000 TPS, right? And so if I do 50,000 TPS, sort of my requirements for the cryptography that I do, they're not as hard because sort of the set size is bigger. So this sort of introduces what we call entropy into the set. So if there's like a very small user base like using these things, you have very low entropy. But if you have like a big user base using it all the time, your entropy is very high, right? So you can have weaker cryptography. In this case, just fixed denomination UTXOs, which is like effectively Bitcoin in some ways, right? It's just adding the fixed denominations. And then suddenly, with a high enough set size, the property of privacy emerges, right? And I've gotten in many an argument about this with the Monero devs, and they're kind of saying, well, if I don't have, perfect sender privacy, you don't have privacy at all. But the implication of that would be to reveal my privacy sort of in this system. I would have to be like KYC'd when I'm buying a burrito at Chipotle. So my guess is like we won't go to the point that we're sort of KYCing burrito purchases. And if that's the case, then something like Chi can offer very good cash-like properties.
Got it. And what about, I know there's other technologies out there in the EVM space, right? We have a project like Tornado Cash that got sanctioned recently. And then there's some advancements in the zero knowledge cryptography space that seems promising. But do we see any viability there?
Yeah, so now you're getting into like Tornado or Zcash, right? Zcash is a chain, very cool. It's actually the people that did Zcash. There's been very few interesting things that have happened in crypto since Bitcoin, and the people that did Zcash, Zuko, actually branched in from like a completely different area of research, which was verifiable computing. And what just happened to have, like what they achieved in sort of, I think it was like maybe 2015, is sort of a complete ability to do computation using algebraic circuits, which allowed them to have sort of arbitrary creation of these zero knowledge proofs. And then they use that to create Zcash. And what Zcash basically does is it uses a zero knowledge proof that sort of takes all of the transactions that go into a block and sort of mixes them together in a way and just sort of proves that the output doesn't sort of violate the spending rules. So that was like Zcash's innovation, and it was pretty cool because that's what actually gave birth to ZK Snarks, which then became ZK Starks, which are now just like ZK whatever, right? But they're the guys that like started all that. Now, the interesting thing about Zcash, though, is it's so expensive to do the proving. They made it an optional feature it's only like a subset of the transaction. So the number of private transactions that actually take place in Zcash is like a couple percent. 95+% of the transactions are just open like Bitcoin. And so if you're like in an open Bitcoin like system and then you do one sort of private transaction, that private transaction doesn't really do anything for you because you're sort of already known when you go to do the private transaction. And so when we talk about like Tornado Cash or we talk about like Zcash, the important piece here is that you want everybody to always be private. And that's kind of Monero's big advantage, is they don't have this sort of entry problem into sort of a pool and an exit problem from the pool, which can be attacked by analyzing amounts. It can be attacked by looking at IP addresses, and it can be attacked using sort of time analysis. So, yeah, that made any sense to anybody.
Yeah, I believe I understood it. Basically, you know, Tornado and the L2s riding on top of Ethereum require you to go in and out. When you're in, it's private, but once you're out, you're not. So something like Monero that's 100% private kind of mitigates that. We did see Tornado Cash get sanctioned, and I wonder how long Monero is going to survive. But what are some of the other risks when it comes to like getting sanctioned? Is it really just as long as we stick along that mean with Quai and the way we're implementing our tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's staying along the mean. I think it's also sort of building a system that doesn't require Rails, right? So one thing that sort of the crypto industry has shown is that having highly volatile tokens isn't necessarily the most desirable feature. We'd like a store of value that kind of appreciates with time and adoption of the network, but transactionally speaking, we want units of account. And that's why you see 70% of all value that's traded in crypto right now is done in stable tokens, US dollar stable tokens, right? But what that does is it makes the crypto systems dependent on the financial systems because the US tokens are really deposits in US bank accounts that then have receipts that sort of trade on chain. So if you look at Ethereum, the USDC doesn't exist on Ethereum. Ethereum is an interchange like the Visa network, but the actual USDC is in the banks, right? And we saw that with Choke Point 2.0 and sort of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank or SVB, right? When they went under, the value of USDC I think went down to like 82 cents. Because the deposits that were underlying them were at risk because there was an issue with the bank and the traditional financial system, right? So if you can create a system that has that endogenous sort of unit of account, you create a more untied system from the current financial system, right? The idea with Quai is that if you have a GPU and you can get electricity to it, you have access. So that is like the most ubiquitous access we can possibly make for the most people in the most places on the planet. And if you do that, that minimizes your dependency on Rails and centralized exchanges and market makers. And that's really the point. And then within the system, if you kind of want to go from, this risk off asset like Quai to a risk on asset like Quai to like a risk off asset like Chi, you can do that without having to leave the system. So then your sort of needs as a user are satisfied and you don't have to go in and out. So then you don't have those rails. And if you don't have those rails, then you've truly built like an independent system.
Got it. That makes that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I also think about a lot is the mass adoption factor, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I don't think we dove deep enough. It also feels like, honestly, one of the things that's preventing mass adoption of the crypto that's prevalent today is just how transparent it is, right? To your point earlier, two burrito merchants can see each other's bank accounts, frankly, and all the transactions that they're making. So, building a crypto system like Quai that enables merchants to have a amount of privacy to where like we're getting back towards a competitive market. What's going on with some of these merchants who are adopting these crypto systems today? Do they understand the privacy implications there?
Well, let's like maybe draw an analogy. let's create the comparison to the internet. Right. When I think about what we're trying to do at Quai, we're trying to build a protocol that's akin to TCP/IP for digitally transmitting value. So if we took the internet and we said that every message you sent over the internet was viewable by everybody in the world in perpetuity on an immutable ledger, how useful would the internet be? Probably not that useful. Right? I mean, it was very early on that we figured out how to get privacy because we either had, you know, networks that were controlled or we put encryption on top of them. And it was only with those things that the internet becomes usable, that you're able to log into a bank account, you're able to have, everybody can read. So, you know, if we're building sort of the TCP/IP of value, you're going to need that same property.
Got it. We also have the usability factor too, right? You know, to your point, I think I read one of your papers previously about the AOL moment. You know, bringing the web browser to the market really made the internet super accessible. When I think about, you know, kind of competing with the incumbent, you know, it feels like something like the payment systems they have today, even the purely digital ones like PayPal, Venmo, the Cash App, Square. How do we achieve something that's that ubiquitous and usable for mass market adoption?
You spend years building an underlying scalable system that works in its truly decentralized format so that when you build the applications that live on top of it, it looks like building a Web 2 app because the base that is the blockchain and are the service providers are analogous and can scale at the same rate and to a higher degree of robustness. So you don't have to work in a heterogeneous environment. You don't have to work with fractured liquidity. You don't have to work with variable protocols, right? That's literally how you do this, right? It's not about like polishing a turd. It's about building a solid base on which you can build anything.
That makes sense. So effectively, Quiet Network has created, you know, I'll call it the value layer on top of TCP/IP. Now it's kind of up to somebody to build that Web 2 app that rides on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? If you look at sort of any crypto system that's on a blockchain that gets any sort of product market fit and starts to get adoption, you know, if that's CryptoKitties, literally an app to breed NFT cats, like took Ethereum down, right? Because it got a modicum of adoption and Ethereum couldn't scale to handle it, right? If we look at people using blockchains transactionally, there's places that have currencies that are much more unstable than the United States, like Buenos Aires. When they looked to stable tokens like USDC on BNB to use as means of transactions, when they started adopting it, the fees went up because they can't scale and they got priced out. So they moved over to Tron. And then the fees went up and they got priced out. So every application, if it's CAT or if it's currency, that's been built on these systems which are fundamentally technically deficient and cannot scale with demand will inevitably break and will inevitably create systems where you're trying to patch over them in the application layer because the base below it can't scale. How crazy would it be to say, I have a database and my database can't scale. So I'm going to create replicates of different shards of a database, and then I'm going to try to tie them together at the application level where each database has a different protocol and different set of information and how I interact with it and has different assets on it. I mean, this is just pure madness, right? So if you take the time to understand the physics, understand the information science, understand how a consensus is achieved in a distributed way, you can build a database that can shard. You can build a database that can scale. And then what the application sees is one endpoint like they traditionally see in Web 2 development.
That makes sense. I'm starting to think about the roadmap now we have the CBDCs that are obviously coming. We have, a mass adoption problem in crypto. We have very, very few projects kind of working in this perspective, in my opinion. So, first we build that TCP/IP, that layer on top of TCP/IP for value. We build it with, the forethought to enable cache-like properties. And then, obviously the simple Web 2 apps come on top of that to compete with the PayPals, the Venmos, the Squares. So it's seamless for the end user to switch between the two and obviously prefer one over the other because one has more utility. But we still have a lot of people using cash in the world writ large, right? Like we're seeing it decline here in the West, but you go into the rural areas and a bunch of my friends still carry a wad of cash around. And then globally, you have a lot of issues with their traditional financial system, which forces their local economies to only use cash, where they don't use any kind of plastic to conduct transactions. So we have to get over that hump too. Am I thinking about this roadmap the same way you would think about it? And like, what's kind of the time horizon there? How far out are some of these CBDCs? It feels like they're right around the corner.
Well, I think the important piece is that the system launches. Once the system launches, this isn't designed to be a centralized thing that is orchestrated, right? We have built a digital organism based on incentive design that will be self-sufficient in the wild, right? So it's not about that thing coming to maturity. It's about that thing existing and existing in a way that is robust and decentralized. So no matter what happens, it always survives, right? Like this system is designed to be a mold spore. This system is designed to be a tardigrade, right? It's designed to self-replicate. It's designed to seek out nutrients. So like once it exists in the wild, I don't think you could ever kill it.
That would be ideal. Appreciate it, Dr. K. We've lost some of our panel, but I'm frankly out of questions, but we have some individuals here who requested to speak. If y'all have any questions, feel free to speak up or raise your hand. Gabriel or Hung? Did you guys want to join in? Go ahead, Gabriel.
Thank you for bringing me up. I was the poster of that Peter Thiel quote, and I'm also gonna call myself the Human Question Factory because I have lots of questions. I have a bunch of questions, but I think I'll start with so let's just run through a trucker situation in the US with Kwai. Could you just talk about how I'm actually interested in a bunch of kind of hypothetical situations. So something like what happened with the truckers where they're trying to raise money. Also just a hypothetical, the government sets up a disinformation board and say I try to start, an organization that's gonna, go against this. And then, I get labeled as a domestic terrorist or something. And we're trying to raise money, people are sending donations. The government makes it illegal to donate to my organization. I'm curious kind of how would Chi hold up to this? Would I want to use something like Monero? Or I'm just interested if you could talk about if this system, if a system using Chi was to come under fire, where you actually had really powerful government interests targeting either the people who are trying to raise money or the people who are donating money, how exactly would that play out, and what would be the risks, what would be secure, what wouldn't be secure?
Yeah, so right, Chi is this interesting sort of straddle point, right? There's sort of sacrifices that we're making to go to scale, which means any individual transaction is less private than what it is in Monero. But the concept is, if everybody uses it in volume at large, you potentially get better properties in some regards. So if we're in a situation and you're doing every sort of day transactions and you're buying your groceries and buying your gas, and suddenly you're like, oh, these truckers, I support bodily autonomy and petitioning, governments to defend that. I would like to send them 20 Chi. It is very unlikely that that would be sort of able to be picked up if it's done that way.
Okay, what about like if what if the system was targeted more aggressively? Like they, I mean, I don't know exactly what the political landscape might be, but like it's possible that if for some reason the government sees, like I have a strong feeling that like with some of the politicians who we currently have, like if they started to see that there was, say, like an organization that was raising significant amounts of money that was harming them politically, that was using crypto, then they might like try to ban all of crypto. And also just like you mentioned before, what was the I forget the name of it, but there was a Samurai wallet like was shut down, and it sounds like that was more of a centralized thing, so it was easier for them to target. But then Monero hasn't been shut down, but like, would Monero be secure again?
Monero is actually showing the degree of resilience that appropriately designed proof of work systems have. Basically, what the government, I think, has decided is two things. One is that I don't think chain analytic companies have been able to unwind Monero. So their tact has been to shut it off by choking the exchanges. And that's why you're seeing Monero consistently being delisted from regulated exchanges. And I think that's sort of the attack vector that's most palpable in these systems. So when you're thinking about designing resilient systems, there's a couple things you want to think about. So one is sort of the economic resilience of the consensus mechanism. You want to generate as many transactions as possible to create the greatest amount of revenue possible so that the proof of work mechanism is economically secure. And underlying that, you also want that system to be used as much as possible to create what I call social resilience. It's one thing to look at an asset like Monero or Bitcoin, where there's some subset of users that maybe only make up 1, 10, 20% of the sort of population, right? Because, if I ban that politically, I'm only sort of disrupting so many people that are using it as this sort of speculative vehicle. There's a certain amount of sort of political damage that is incurred from doing that. Now, on the other hand, if I can create a whole society that is doing a majority of their transactions in a cryptocurrency, and you suddenly try to ban that, and a person can't buy food for their kids or gas for their car, that is politically catastrophic. That is self-inflagration, right? So that is a degree of social resilience that you can achieve if you can scale to the point that people can use this transactionally.
So would you say the attack vector there is, effectively, if you sanction the technology, you're choking yourself out from the rest of the world and, basically sacrificing your own economic viability, and then just generally shutting down the system is protected through scale as well economically?
Yeah, well, I mean, so and I misused a word. I should have said emulation, not inflagration. But yeah, I would say from a societal standpoint, the fact that there's 196 jurisdictions, nation states in the world, creates a very interesting thing, because what crypto is really promising to do, if it can become digital cash and can have low fees, can have economic security, can be used ubiquitously for transactions, what we're actually talking about is a vastly more efficient mechanism for creating commerce and wealth in society. So the jurisdictions that decide to ban it will become backwaters, and the jurisdictions that decide to embrace it will become the efficient future of the world. So, I think that there's jurisdictional resilience because I don't think all places will try to ban cryptos. And those that embrace it will gain economic advantage that will win out over time.
Got it. That makes sense. Did you have another question, Gabriel?
I'm thinking. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Dr. K. And I think that's also why we went with GPU mining as well, right? Just creating that distribution and allowing for that mold spore to take root. You've mentioned in the past how, effectively, by using GPUs, you're also kind of forcing the distribution by, causing the states to consider whether or not sanctioning that product is also crippling themselves in other technological aspects as well, and economic opportunities with, say, AI and other industries that depend on this tech. Would you say that that's kind of like the general gist of why we went this direction?
Yeah. So exactly. So with GPUs, when designing these systems, like we're just trying to design a system to create the greatest amount of utility for the greatest number of people, period. Right. And if we can do that, we can generate the most economically resilient system that exists. That's why you want to scale. That's why you want to have this used for smart contract and finance, and why you want it to be used for meme tokens, and you want it to be used for NFTs, and you want it to be used for cash, and you want it to be used for everything it can possibly be used for that's willing to economically pay to get on chain, right? That generates the greatest amount of revenue, that generates the greatest amount of economic resilience, that creates the greatest degree of social resilience. And if we look at GPUs, to your point, their general purpose, right? The one thing that jurisdictions are very good at is managing import exports. So if you had an ASIC and the ASIC was the way to sort of participate in the network, and they decided they didn't want their population having access in that network, they could very easily shut down the movement of ASICs across their borders. But with GPUs, they already exist in large number and they're used for many applications. So if you were to try to sort of shut those things down, you would have a very tough time doing so because it would have knock-on economic impacts in your AI industry, in your rendering of graphics and 3D works, in gaming, so on and so forth. So by being dependent on more ubiquitously available hardware, it makes it harder for the system to be controlled, and that is a design choice.
I have a question just to like press against that because it also does tie to privacy. Would there be some kind of attack though still, where like say the FBI does what they kind of did with Tor and they start like setting up a bunch of Quai nodes, and they could potentially run some very big Quai nodes, and aren't those nodes going to be interacting with other nodes, and then they could get like IP addresses and sort of just just be able to pinpoint all the people who are connecting to the network and just shut them down like one by one. I might not be understanding the technology underneath this, but I'm curious, like a situation like that.
So you're highlighting the weakness of the underlying TCP/IP layer in terms of management and tracking, and we have ancillary tools to sort of deal with that. And those same tools could be used here for people that sort of get shut down. So, people in Brazil that can't access X, they use a VPN. And similarly, you could do the same thing if you wanted to sort of access the network.
Oh, got it. Okay, so standard kind of like VPN technologies and others like that could solve that particular like vulnerability.
Yeah, so I mean, this is in Quai we're using libp2p, and there's also kind of like interesting mechanisms in how transactions propagate. So there's actually an incentive for miners to propagate sets of transactions in what we call work shares. So then that means that like the hash rate becomes ingress points. So you could create your own ingress point, or you could have like a trusted ingress point, but you don't need to communicate with the entirety of the network. If you have that ingress point or the trusted ingress point, you're sort of anonymized into that set. So there's are some inbuilt features, but that hasn't really been a focus. But those kind of ideas and technologies can be overlaid into the system independent of the protocol.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Really appreciate it, Dr. K. Thanks for the questions, Gabriel. We're coming close up on 2 hours here, and I think we've hammered this point home pretty well. I'm gonna attempt to summarize, Dr. K. Help me out here if I'd step out of line, but effectively, we're racing against the CBDC, which has absolutely zero privacy, and frankly, it could potentially enable some financial slavery and some authoritarian regimes and actions like we've seen in recent history. This problem is becoming realer and realer every day. And we do that by really building a value layer on the internet that can demonstrate cash-like properties, enables at least a level of privacy that's satisfying the expectations of the current financial system and what's acceptable. And we do that with a robust system that enables some payment rails on top of it, or rails is the wrong term here, maybe payment apps on top of it that can compete head to head with what people are used to today. And then we achieve security through, the mass distribution and decentralization through GPUs on a system that can scale to satisfy, frankly, the world. And so hopefully achieving a stateless global peer-to-peer economy. And that's how we beat out, the CBDC, by providing that mass utility to the global economy.
Yeah, that's right. I think when we're thinking about these systems, there's sort of like a lot of tech, but it really comes down to really a singular idea. Can you build a better system than the alternative that creates greater value for its users? And if you do that, users will adopt it. That's
Right.
like the goal, right?
Right. Something
Um,
that's materially better than the incumbent and capable of mass adoption.
Right, and that's why we've taken so long to build Quai, is because we're not here to make a roadmap, we're not here to make a fragile system, we're not here to make something that doesn't create a economically decentralized, credibly neutral monetary system. Like, that is our goal. So to do that has taken tremendous amounts of effort and innovation over multiple years to create a chain that can technologically answer the questions of how you create scale with economic security. And only with that can we start to sort of begin to even ponder how you can build applications that look better than what exists.
Here. Yeah, this team has been at it for quite a long time, and everybody's being super stoic, but the excitement is tangible. Let's see here. Gabriel, last call for questions.
Yeah, actually, I do have another question. I hope that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
So just going back to the point of like, suppose that I do have some kind of, I mean, I guess this would apply just to a business as much as it would apply to, some kind of activist organization that's trying to raise money with Qi. But I had how hard would it be, like, if the FBI leverages all of their crypto identification technology against, like, I like, say on some sort of like private forum or something, using anonymously, I post like an address where people can send their donations to my organization, which is like trying to organize for free speech when they've, like, against the government in the US that dystopian is like disinformation board or whatever, something like that. How hard would it be using Qi for them to like identify me and or identify like all of the people who have donated to that address? And then the same question also kind of applies also just with a business, like connecting to, you mentioned how I forget if it was here or somewhere else, but I believe you said that the Kwai aspect of it, like aside from the Qi, is kind of just as like everything's basically totally tradable. And so if we were to have a future system where, say, like where a company like Chipotle, their entire like their whole stock is issued on the Kwai network, because that's like where you can actually build things, then wouldn't there be a problem if people are paying them in Qi, and then they're setting up their, like, the whole financial system is on Kwai, so they have to convert their Qi over. When they make that conversion, isn't there going to be like that loss of privacy? Because like as soon as they enter the Kwai network, then like the Kwai aspect of it as opposed to Qi, then there would be that like loss of privacy. So I'm curious, just
Yeah. No. So you're thinking about this entirely correctly. So when you go from Kwai to Qi, depending on how you do it and when you do it, it's definitely lost in privacy. With this example of Chipotle as a publicly traded company, they're probably going to be.
Did you mean from Qi to Kwai there's a loss in privacy?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from Qi to Kwai, there's a loss of privacy. But for a publicly traded company like Chipotle, when they're sort of reconciling the revenue in aggregate, that potentially is a very fine thing that they want to do. Now, I'll also point out. Okay, let me start at the beginning of the thread, and then we'll just pull it right on through. So, because Qi is fixed denominations, when you have an address, you have a collision problem. Okay. And you have sort of like a syncing problem in terms of sort of how you can register what amounts you have in the blockchain when somebody sends it to you asynchronously. So the way that you have to solve that is through something called BIP47, which implements payment codes. So instead of actually posting a public address, what you're doing is you're posting a payment code. And what that payment code is doing is, to not be complicated, basically I multiply your payment code with my payment code, and we create a payment channel. And then when I send you money, it goes to addresses sort of in that channel. It's not a channel from the perspective of like Lightning, where it isn't settled. It's just a channel in terms of the address derivation tree. So that ensures that when I send you money, I'm not sort of colliding with addresses that may be used by another set of people, which is important sort of in this fixed denomination system. So what that does is that as an organization, you could post your payment code, and people don't actually know what money is sent to that payment code unless they also have the payment code of the person sending it. Now, in the case of Chipotle, they could use payment codes, and with their internal reconciliation, they could use those payment codes to see exactly how much money was received. They could trace and track all of it. They could even reveal that to other parties if they so chose, like auditors or government entities, and that's fine, but it's optional to the recipient. So there's privacy, but there's also sort of optionally transparent, and there's optional auditability. So you can use your codes how you want to share with people what you want. So sort of it comports to that concept of running a business, wherein I can have sort of anonymity where I need it, maybe at the local and store levels, but I can also at some point reconcile it, audit it, and then roll it up into the balance sheet.
Okay, interesting. Now, did you have more to add, or can I ask a kind of follow-up?
No, go for a follow-up.
Okay, so what if I'm running, like a activist organization or something, and that for some reason that the FBI is going after, and what if they actually donate to that payment channel or the payment code that's multiplied? Like, would they? I mean, if
they would be able to see the payments that they've sent,
the ones that they've sent, but they wouldn't be able to get to see the ones that other people have sent?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Now they could like try to do so then depending on like what you do as an activist organization, there's downstream things that you could do to make sure that them sending you money doesn't sort of poison your pool. But that exists if you want to like take that treatment, but it would be up to the user to like be smart enough to do that.
The user, as in the organization that is
Yes.
getting the money. Oh,
Yeah. So there's like secondary things that they would want to do to like they wouldn't necessarily do by default. That like if sort of they right, this is like a kind of like a dust attack in Bitcoin in some ways. So if they don't do anything, the dust attack would work. If they have a little bit of intelligence, they could make sure that they're not like DOSed by dusting.
Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Great questions, like always, Gabriel. Really appreciate it. All right. I think we've gone for a while now. Gabriel, do you have one more? Dr. K, you up for it?
No, I was just saying thank you for the opportunity. I think I have asked all my questions.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Gabriel. It's like getting new, intelligent. We're going to turn you into a Quimaxi here pretty quick.
It's already happening.
Well, go check out the light paper that just dropped today. Golden Age is awesome. Looking forward to your thoughts on that as you churn through it. I know it's not the shortest, but it's a great read. We're also looking forward to Golden Age getting launched here right around the corner next Tuesday. So keep your eyes peeled on this account, Dr. K's account. And you guys should be hearing more from us soon. I think we're going to wrap it up here. What do you say, Dr. K?
Yeah, let's call it a night. Appreciate for everybody coming that made it through the 2 hours. And looking forward to Golden Age.
Here. Let's go. All right. Thanks, folks. Have a great night, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, y'all.